Coach Fisher. How's it going?
Great, guys. Appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah, we're excited to talk with you. Before we dive into your coaching experience, though, I wanted to throw it all the way back to your playing days. You played ball at Mount Union, and I think a lot of our listeners know when they think of Division III football, they think of Mount Union, right? They've obviously been at the top of the division for a long, long time. You were there in 2005, 2006, and you actually won 2 national championships there as a quarterback. Talk a little bit about your experience as a player playing at such an elite program, winning championships, and how you've kind of carried that over into your coaching philosophy.
Yeah, well, first of all, I would use the word play loosely. I was a backup quarterback at a championship program, and but you know what? It really taught me a lot, just because I knew going into it I wanted to coach. I was fortunate to play high school football at the same high school that Larry Karras played at. And my high school coach were former All-Americans at Mount Union. Jason Hall was a linebacker, and then Bo Balderson was a running back. He was our offensive coordinator. So we were definitely kind of fortunate to be involved in that culture and that offense and at a young age as a high school guy. But going into it as, like I said, playing and everything, I guess one thing that stuck with me a lot, especially as coaching, is I get to share that experience with some of my players. Is, whether you played in the game and you were the star player, or you had a role as a special teams player, or like myself, a role as a scout team player. I think what set Mount Union apart, and the culture was already established when we got there, but it was almost like a standard of expectations was, whatever your role is here, the coaches, yeah, they were counting on it, but it was really driven home that the players were counting on you to be a star in whatever role that was. Whatever, if you were going to be the scout team quarterback, then go be the best scout team quarterback is to help that defense out. Or, if you were going to be the star wide receiver, then go be a star. But whatever role that was, it was a player expectation driven program. I know that we talk about that all the time, is like, it just felt like, I know that when I walked into the weight room at Mount Union, that I had to work as hard as I could, because I was limited athletically than more than some of the guys that were on my team.
Yeah.
But I knew that if I was lifting with a group, one, that I had to bring it every day. And then two, if there was a guy that was a better player than me that maybe wasn't as great at working out, or maybe just going through the motions, I was able to push him, and I took pride in that. It was funny that I got my name on the wall for one thing at Mount Union, and it was being, I think, the 3rd strongest quarterback in all time, like total numbers. And it was funny because my roommate, who was another quarterback, beat me by like 50 pounds. And I think, but it was just that competition-driven thing. It was just, some of those dudes I was around, those are the most competitive dudes I've ever been around. And they're successful in business and coaching and whatever they've done in their life, because it's like they were just so competitive. So, my experience as a player there taught me a lot about just kind of what it was like to be a star in whatever role you had.
Coach, that's great. You talked about a lot of success that you had there at Mount Union. Then you move into your coaching career and look at a lot of your stops, man. You've had a ton of success at a lot of different programs. Now, I'm rocking the Davidson shirt, if you can see that, man. But
I see that. I got this. I love it.
Yeah,
I love
so
it.
Me and Coach Fisher coached at Davidson College together. Now, that's not a part of the success narrative we're talking about here, unfortunately. But you had success at other programs, Armwood. You guys had an undefeated season, finished, I think, ranked number 2 in the country by ESPN, part of the Ohio State program. Once again, paired with your success that you've had at as a player at Mount Union, what are some commonalities amongst this high success, championship winning programs and players and coaches? What are some things that you find that you see everywhere that tend to help the team be successful?
I love this question, because this right here has been the foundation for my philosophy as a coach, as a recruiter. I talk to it about recruits. I talk to it with other coaches. Talk to it about with my players in my room, and if I'm addressing a team, I get to talk to them about, like, no matter what level or even sport, every championship team I've been a part of as a player or a coach had two things in common. And I look back to my time, I go all the way back to like 8th grade, middle school basketball. We had 7 guys on the team, and we were the best team in the conference, and we won and all that. But I think back to that team, and I think back to, the championship teams we were on at Mount Union, and then fast forward to, as a high school coach at Armwood in Tampa, Florida, that championship team, and then the 2014 national championship team at Ohio State. The two things that stood out to me everywhere I've been, and I can connect the dots to all those places, are they're the most competitive people I've ever been around. And 2, they are the closest. Those 2 things have showed up at each spot that have won championships. And I talked to the guys about, like, when I say competitive, I mean, I'm not talking like, hey man, let's win this one-on-one drill at practice. Like, yeah, no, we get that. No, I'm talking like, I mean, at Mount Union, like we had this, we had like 8-foot basketball hoop in our driveway. It was like Game 7 NBA Finals, like 1980s NBA Finals. You know what I mean? And it was on, and it wasn't like, it wasn't there wasn't any malice or anything. It was just we had a group of guys that just had such a desire to win, and it was no matter what we did, we were just so competitive. I always joke with Jeff Dart, who is one of my best friends in college, who's now the head coach at Mount Union. And he's an offensive lineman, and I was just a small backup quarterback. But I know that one time I took it to the hoop, and I was like, I'm either going to get destroyed or I'm dunking on him. And it was, 8-foot hoop, but I let him have it, and I still don't let him live it down to this day. But it was just that competitive drive that it was like you had to be competitive or you just didn't fit in. It wasn't like you just didn't survive. You felt out of place, you felt awkward. And that was the same case with everywhere that I've been, that people have won championships. The competitive nature was just it translated practice, weight training, games, whatever it was just competitiveness. And then the closeness was everybody thinks that, like, well, that team's really close. They hang out, they're best friends or they're buddy with everybody. And that's not necessarily the case on high achieving teams. I don't believe. I believe that in terms of being close as a team, that you are connected enough with someone to hold them accountable if they're not doing the things that need to be done to reach the level that you're trying to get to. It's like, guys, if you don't touch that line, it's not, man, coach is going to get on me. No. It's your teammates. And it was almost a sense of, I don't want to not touch that line because I'm afraid if someone's going to get on me. It was more of, I don't want to let the guy down next to me. And that was like, and it was the ability to be close enough to snatch somebody up when they weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing and saying, hey man, get right. And it wasn't like, there wasn't an animosity there because there was a connection. So before you can lead or do anything, you have to connect. They talk about the what are trust builders and trust busters. There's 3 things that build trust. It's the ability to connect, and it's character, and so those 2 things, like, you got to have some kind of connection to hold that and build that trust and trust that someone's going to do the right thing and hold them accountable. And the third piece that we talk about, trust busters, is competency. Like, obviously you got to be a high operator. You got to know what you're doing. And,
right.
That goes back to, like, I have to trust that, like, if you don't know, you're going to seek help and you're going to ask and you're going to become a high operator. But those 2 things that I look back through every championship team I've been on, and I'm sure people can relate. If you really think back, okay, well, we close, like, not close, like maybe, yeah, not everybody hangs out with everybody, but you did a lot together. Like, I remember like 40 of us went on spring break together, like the South Padre Island, 40 football players. You know what I mean? Like, but that's a big group, but we did everything together, and so we were close. And like I said, in that Ohio State 2014 team, those guys were super close and super competitive. I just remember, and I was, I fly on the wall, just trying to learn and grow in this profession. And, very fortunate to just be able to observe that culture that Coach Meyer had instilled. And, but I just remember we lost to Virginia Tech, and that home opener. And it was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to bounce back from that? But, you come in the next day and it wasn't like, there wasn't that sense of panic or anything. I was working with the offensive line at the time. And I just remember the offensive line just kind of saying, like, hey, like, nobody's complaining. Nobody was doing anything where pointing fingers or anything, and said, listen, guys, here's the reality. All right, let's just put our backs together. Don't look up and just swing, and then we'll find out where we are at the end of the season.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was like just a bunch of dudes that just went to work, like professionals, coaches, players, like just like, don't worry about that. Block out the outside noise and just keep going forward. Put your backs to each other and just realize that everything inside these walls, that's who we got to lean on right now. That was really powerful for me to see that.
I think those two characteristics you brought up there, the competitiveness and the closeness, I think they go hand in hand because if you're competitive, but you're not close with one another, right, then that competitiveness can lead to malice, can lead to separation. If you're close but not competitive, right, well, then you're just buddies. You're just hanging out. You don't really care. There's not really a drive there. But as soon as you put them together, it creates this bond that I think is really hard to break. What are some of the ways that, it's easy to like walk into Mount Union, right, as a player and be like, well, the culture's established, like this is how we do things, right? You go to a place like Ohio State, this is the culture, this is how we do things. How do you kind of take some of those characteristics from the places you've been, like you've learned, and then instill them maybe in a culture that's not built around those foundations?
Well, I think that sometimes you have to be cognizant of your surroundings and just understand where you are at times. I know that the first thing you have to do is you have to build trust. If you ever want to instill any kind of culture, you have to build trust. And we talked about those 3 trust builders, and it goes back to something that, and I was a teacher for 5 years, and I went to Mount Union and studied to be a teacher. And, it was on I remember ED 150W, the first class that you take during the, your first year is you take this class, and the first thing on the syllabus says they won't care until they know how much you care. And I know that Coach Karras has said it, Coach Campbell at Iowa State has said that multiple times, and I believe that. So to start to build that culture, you got to get to know these guys and connect with them on a personal level. You should always know their hero, their highlight, and their heartache. You know what I mean? If you can find that out about each one of your guys just from the start, and say, before say, hey, we're the running backs at UT Martin, we're going to do this, and this. No. Just get to know them on a personal level, connect with them, and that's a great way. And I always talked about it. I was like, and it wasn't not like, hey man, just tell me these 3 things real quick. No, it's like, okay, first meeting, let's talk about who are your guys' heroes. Tell me why, and just really open up and show them you're vulnerable. And I talk about my heroes first, and I kind of there's times where I'll get choked up talking about it just because they mean so much to me, and the players see that, and then so now I'm starting to build that connection with them, and so on. And what I believe, and I talk to my guys like this. I said, guys, here's what the definition of culture is to me. Culture is the only acceptable behavior, action, or actions by a group of people or person. So culture is there's good culture, bad culture. It's always there because it's whatever's allowed. If you allow guys to touch the line or not touch the line, then that's your culture. Right. So when I talk to my players, I give them, after I've connected with them, that's the first thing I do. Then the next thing is I try to give them real life experiences of things that maybe I've experienced about it. And then they are able to tie that in like, oh yeah, I know that. Like for example, I got to be the receivers coach at Notre Dame College for 3 weeks right before I joined the Davidson staff and got to work with Mario. And, the first thing I did with those guys is I hammered culture and expectations and belief. And I said, guys, here's when we run gassers, like we drop balls, all that, turnovers. Mickey Mental, was the offensive coordinator at the time. He would keep track, and then we'd run gassers at the end of practice. Now he's the head coach there, and it was, guys, here's what we're going to do in our room. We're going to go +2. All right. And that's something I picked up from Coach Meyer, but they're like, well, Coach, what's +2? +2, if you're going to run 10 yards, okay, run 12. Just do it. Just trust me on this. Just do it. So we run gassers, and sure enough, they run past the line and slap the ground. Okay. And then we're getting looks like, guys, that's not normal. That's weird. Why are y'all doing that? So then I said, just keep doing it. And they kept doing it, and they kept doing it. And the next thing you know, the quarterbacks did it. And the next thing you go, the running backs did it. And it was like, see how that kind of grows? You can grow your, but that's just kind of the things that I've done. And then they saw that. They visually saw their teammates buying into a culture that they were establishing. So now I was able to say, okay, guys, like this is now here's where it gets real. Okay, this is the culture that you've established, and you guys started it, so you can't slip up at all. So you have to be, you have to hold yourself to a higher standard if you're going to lead, if you're going to establish that culture. Okay, but you've got to hold yourself to a high standard, and hopefully once you pull back as a leader, then that culture kind of runs itself. But that's some things I do, like player buy-in, and and just get to know them on a personal level. I have them over to my house a lot. Let them see me as a human being, and talk to them about things outside of football, like some hobbies, things that maybe I'll be able to connect with them. But those are some things I do to connect with my players and kind of establish that culture. I just constantly remind them, like, this is the only acceptable behavior here. Now you can that's fine, you can do that, but you just can't roll with them. Like you can do these things, but you just can't be a running back at UT Martin. I mean, that's cool. They're not a bad guy. That's okay. All right. But if you're going to say I'm a running back at UT Martin, this is the things that you're going to do. And we talk about kind of what our culture is here in our running back room.
That's awesome, Coach. Now, as you mentioned, obviously we had the background together, so we've had the opportunity to have some, conversations about our goals and aspirations. And I know something for you that was very important was that sooner than later, at some point in time, be a head coach and be able to run the program the way you want to run it. And kind of looking at your resume, man, you've had a lot of experience at a lot of different positions, man. You've been a QB coach, running backs coach, tight ends coach, O-line guy, defensive backs guy. You're the special teams coordinator currently. How has this versatile experience allowed for you to be better prepared for a head coach?
Well, I think that, what it taught me was, especially like, being a defensive backs coach or corners coach, I was just very outside of my comfort zone. And something that I learned from Coach Karras was, it's okay to seek knowledge and try to improve your coaching intelligence. You're not, it doesn't mean that you don't know. He was the head swim coach, and even, he had never done that before. And I know that he had reached out to someone that was extremely successful in that profession. And so you're thinking like, well, Larry Karras can ask for help. I for sure can ask for help. And I know that, like, I know, Mario, that I had talked to you quite a few times about when I got hired here as the running backs coach. And I know that I had, someone I leaned on heavily at Davidson was Justin Hood. And I think the world of Justin. I think he is a fantastic coach, and he's got a bright future. But I think what it did for me was it showed me, one is like seek knowledge, and having all those different experiences. It also helps me in thinking of, like, I guess when you're hiring a staff too, if you think about like, hey, I need to at least have an understanding what I'm looking for in a coach and understanding what's going on in my program, special teams, defense, offense, and schematic wise, because I also think that there's such a big part of being a head coach, is you're developing the culture and you're driving that culture forward. And every place is different, and every place has got its own unique challenges. And I think that one thing I've learned as I've bounced around from place is there are certain things that I believe in, and as I went to other places, if I saw something maybe I didn't believe in it either reinforced my views. Okay, this is solid. This is my philosophy. This is what I believe in, and this is why. And then, or I'm like, wow, I never thought of it like that before. That's a great idea. And I think I've also learned is, like, you can't treat each institution the same. I think that if you're coaching someone at Davidson College, it's a different animal than it is if you're coaching someone at Ohio State. It is what it is. You have to teach each place like its own, but I've been very fortunate to work for great head coaches too, all the way back to high school. The first guy that I worked with, Joe Fabrizio, this guy was unbelievable. St. Pete High head coach. He just retired, but this guy had such an impact on me. He was able to connect with these kids, and then Robert Weiner, who's now the quarterbacks coach and co-offensive coordinator at Toledo. I worked for him when I was at Plant High School. Those two guys, just the way they connected with people, and just were so humble. So I learned that, and then obviously Coach Meyer, just driving that culture home and demanding from his coaches, and just so demanding. But at the time is like each one of those guys are all different. They're all personal touch on the program. Like Tom Allen, you know what I mean? Tom Allen has a totally different approach to his program, where it's love each other, and it's positive driven, and it's holding people accountable and talking about what accountability means, and talking about, well, if you hold someone accountable, it means truly, that's really at the core of what love is. Like, if you want to love somebody, you're going to hold them accountable because you want to see them do the right thing. You care about them enough to hold them accountable.
Right.
So those things are super important to me, and I think that bouncing around, and I do have an idea of what I want my program to look like, what I want my program to stand for. Especially, I think something that has really helped me is being the recruiting coordinator here this past season, as just in terms of having a touch on the recruiting coordinator and the special teams coordinator, being able to touch the whole team as the special teams coordinator, and then the recruiting coordinator is being able to try to manage the different personalities on the staff and use their strengths and bring out their strengths, and try to help them, grow as recruiters. And so that's been in organizing a calendar and all that. So that's been beneficial as well. But being all the different places and it just taught me to, like I said, just to seek knowledge and try to grow. Because like I said, I'm never going to know enough football. I'm never going to know enough about leadership or decisions, and because because Mike DeBoer, the guy I worked for at Indiana, this guy was unbelievable. This guy was the offensive coordinator at Michigan for 14 years. Coach Tom Brady, Charles Woodson, won a national championship in the Rose Bowl in '97, and this guy till this day is still just a hound for knowledge. Like, I mean, we'll talk once a week, and I'll run a question by him, and then he is so open with me, and just a lifelong learner. Coach Karras, lifelong learner.
Yeah.
So that's probably some of the things that I've learned, is like, as I develop this head coaching philosophy, and I've got a binder, and I feel pretty good about it, of things I would do. And I know that the 35 under 35 thing was absolutely fantastic for me, because it did bring up some things that I hadn't thought about. I know that we had an athletic director speak to us, and I was able to follow up with a phone call, and we spent about 30 to 45 minutes on the phone. And I kind of went through my plan for a program, and I said, I want you to, tell me if there's things I'm missing, things that you might have questions about, so I can really button this thing up. And so that was an unbelievable professional development opportunity to do that. But I think that being able to build the culture and sustain it, and ultimately, just here's the cool thing is, at college, 18 to 22 years old, right? They're independent. They really don't know if they don't know yet. They kind of think they know, but it's like, you get your hands on them, and it's like, and it's real life problems. Like they're dealing with school. They're dealing with, what are they going to do when they graduate?
Right.
The girlfriends that they might end up marrying. Some of our players have children. So it's like, what a great time and a great platform to have as a head football coach to really reach these kids at 18 to 22-year-old level. Hire great coaches that are lifelong learners and those scheme guys. But as a head coach, be able to touch and relate to all your guys and really love them. And that doesn't mean, guys, it doesn't mean like, hey, you're doing a great job, all that, you know what I mean, and all that stuff. It's holding them accountable, having hard conversations, saying, this is the expectations. If I don't hold you to these expectations, all right, and I let you come short of these because I think, then I don't really care about you, because I'm not pushing you to reach your full potential. I know, like, Ed Warner is another guy that's a huge mentor for me, and he'd always say, like, coaching is taking people where they can't take themselves. And I think that's such a good thing to think about. Is like, you're right. Our job is to take these kids where they can't take themselves. They're willing. If there's the effort, then let me take them where they can't take themselves.
That's awesome, Coach. It's funny. You actually, I had one more question for you, but you kind of answered it. We were talking a little bit about just why professional development is so important to you, and that's great. You kind of hit on it perfect there at the end. So I think let's go ahead and give you a chance to talk a little bit about your social media handle, stuff like that. Plug all that stuff in case guys want to get a hold of you, reach out to you, follow up after this interview. They listen to it, they got questions. Where can they reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. My Twitter handle is @CoachFisher And my cell phone number is 330-592-6072. Feel free to reach out with any questions or things like that if you have ideas or just, want to talk about throw game, run game, formation, any kind of just nuggets, I guess, that you have for me. Special teams guys, absolutely. This is my first time being a coordinator for special teams, and I know the way that I've done it at James Madison and Ohio State and other places, but I'm always open to learn. I know Mario, I've hit you up, and you've helped me, and Mario did a great job. I just felt as an assistant he was extremely organized. So I always knew what was expected of me during the drills and everything. So that was great. But, yeah, I was always open, especially with our season being canceled right now, and outside of recruiting and working with my guys a little bit during the week. I've got some time to just really grow, and would love to chat.
Well, he hasn't changed. He's still extremely organized. He brings all the questions to these interviews and keeps me on point. So I appreciate working with him too. So, but we'll link all that stuff down in the show notes, Coach. Make it easy for guys to reach out to you. And like I said, appreciate you hopping on. This is awesome.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep. Thanks for having me, guys.